Ah! I guess I should start reading these. What inspired you to start a YouTube channel? I don't remember. I should start a YouTube channel. Dear Ginge, you should play outside more. This one's probably from my sister. She told me the same thing last week.
You've been playing this game for 3 days. You should take a break and play outside.
I've been trying for 25 years. I've searched every game store in town twice, and I still haven't been able to find it. What system is it for?
The real world?
Never heard of it. Must be one of those bootleg consoles. Ah! What's that?
Reality?
How long has that been there?
Thanks for not begging for subscribers. No, I do. I just do it offline like a professional YouTuber.
Hey, subscribe to my channel.
No.
Hey, Michael, subscribe to my... Hey, Michael, where are you going? Don't you run away from me.
I have a 2% success rate! Why do you draw yourself with short hair when you have long hair? I usually look like an American Ed Sheeran, but the pandemic gave me a good reason to grow my hair out for a little while. I draw my character with short hair because I'll be going back to that soon. The long hair is temporary. Dear Ginge, you should show off your game collection. Well, this video is going to be longer than I thought. What's up, gamers? Welcome to Video Game Gems. Today is the 1-year anniversary of the channel, so I thought it would be fun to show you guys my game room and everything I've collected over the years. My collection started with the very first game I ever owned, a Winnie the Pooh Game Boy Color game that came boxed with my pink Game Boy Advance. I never traded in or resold any of my games for fear that I wouldn't have them if I felt nostalgic and wanted to pick them back up. I've lost a few and gave some duplicates away over the years, but I saw no point in mindlessly getting rid of my games. Over the years, my collection slowly grew, and what do I have to show for it? Womp. My collection is pretty lackluster compared to most collectors. The idea of buying a game that I might not play just to have it sit on my shelf is just a waste of money, in my opinion. I'm not going to pick up a game if I don't have the system for it, or I know I'm not going to play it. That being said, I'm also the kind of guy who buys 2 copies of Luigi's Mansion 3D and a 2DS so I can experience the multiplayer with another person but can't find another person to play with. I was afraid that starting a serious retro gaming collection would be overwhelming and cost a lot, so I focused on getting the games and merchandise I really wanted instead of trying to outshine my friends. At least that was the case until I saw Scott, AVGN, and Irate Gamers collections and rethought my life decisions. Of course, not all of my games are physical. I have plenty of digital games on various consoles. My game shelf is relatively new. My dad made it for my birthday last year. Until then, I was storing all of my games inside my wooden display case. When I organize my games, all of my handhelds come first. I consider them a league of their own, separate from console games. I made an exception for the PSP games and put them in the second row with the rest of my PlayStation games because the boxes are bigger. I stuck my Game Boy games in a box because their cases were more fragile and usually thrown away after I pulled the games out. I also stuck my Neo Geo Pocket game in there since I bought it on eBay and it didn't come with a case. I put my DS and 3DS games in a separate box because they're a little more fragile. I don't keep them in their cases because it's much more convenient to take a box with me when I travel than a handful of cases.
I'm ready to go, Mom!
I separate the rest of my games by company and system in alphabetical order. I started with the PSP games because they're also handheld and followed them up with the rest of my PlayStation games, PS2, PS3, and PS4. The PSP games actually belong to my older brother. I made a habit of hanging on to all the family consoles and games that we don't play much anymore. I grew up with Nintendo, so I personally didn't own a Sony console until I got the PS4 Uncharted bundle for Christmas a few years ago. I also bought a Vita the same day. I bought a PS3 a few years later when I was binging the Tales series, so I could play Tales of Xillia. I'll probably buy more in the future, but right now I'm focused on collecting rare games and console accessories, which we'll get to later. Since PlayStation and Xbox are big competitors, while Nintendo's just sort of there, it made more sense for the Xbox games to follow PlayStation. Once again, following order of operations, I started with the original Xbox and moved towards the 360. I don't own an Xbox One because there aren't any exclusive games that inspire me to go out and buy one. Once again, most of these games belong to my older brother, since he owned a 360 growing up. A few of the games are mine. I played the 360 a little more heavily after my brother moved out and got a place of his own. I eventually bought my own 360 after my brother suffered the Red Ring of Death and he failed miserably trying to reverse engineer it back to life. Last but not least, Nintendo, my entire childhood. The GameCube was the first home console I owned. By the time I was able to buy my own games, I bought the Wii U. I had very few games for the NGC growing up, but I didn't care. When you played a GameCube game, you knew you were getting your money's worth. I played all of my games to death and 100%ed every single one of them. I got the Wii in the middle of its lifespan. It was a family console, so we had a hefty collection of games for it. I swear this one is my sister's. My siblings eventually broke the system. I'm not sure which one, but my money's on Michael, so I bought one of my own. I lent my Wii and most of my games to my sister, which is why there are very few on the shelf. At the time I had the Wii U and I wasn't playing any of my Wii games. I also lent her a few of my 3DS and DS games. She wasn't much of a gamer, so I gave her the simpler titles. This last pile is full of various games for systems that I either don't have enough of to start a proper pile, or I don't have their cases. I know it's unprofessional, but I'll work with what I have. Even without my full collection, it's easy to see that my 3DS games trump the others. I bought my 3DS after it dropped in price. My only choices at the time were Ruby Red, Blue, and Black, so obviously I had to choose the red. This was around the time I started buying games with my own money, and most 3DS games were $10 less than Wii U games. If I had money to spend and already had the games I wanted, I went out and bought 3DS games that were on sale while I waited for new games to release. There are a few game cases on the shelf of games that I don't have. GameStop was just throwing them away while I was waiting in line for the midnight release of the Switch, so I snatched them and added them to my collection. I keep my Super Mario Amiibo display on top of the shelf because it won't fit in my display case, and it helps fill out the room. Rob is technically a console accessory rather than merchandise, so I also keep it outside the display case. I set my TV and the consoles I play the most in the middle of the room, along with my 360. The PlayStation 4 and Switch are my main go-tos, but also spend a lot of time off the shelf since I take them with me when I visit friends. The Wii U doesn't get as much attention as it used to, since Nintendo stopped making games for it, but I still play it more than the rest of my classic consoles. The 360 is still relatively new to my collection. I bought it used not too long ago with the intent of speedrunning Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I planned on transferring my brother's data from his original 360 hard drive onto it, but his hard drive was corrupted and wouldn't copy over. So I gave up my dream of becoming a speedrunner and started working on video game gems instead. And look how far I've come! I keep my old drawing tablet under the table as well. I have nowhere else to put it, and it's just as fragile and expensive as my game consoles. There's no reason for me to store it somewhere it'll get damaged. I use this shelf to store all of my keepsakes, as well as most of my art supplies and equipment and props from my YouTube videos. I don't have a separate room for my personal stuff, so my game room doubles as my bedroom. I keep games I borrow from other people on this shelf so I don't forget that I don't actually own them. The giant Luigi was a prize I won at Holiday World. Actually, a friend of mine won it for me, but I paid for it, so... I bought a Luigi doll. I keep my Ocarina collection in the middle drawer. 2 of them are Zelda replicas. Yes, they are real, and yes, I can play them. I keep most of my expensive video game merchandise inside my display case, along with a few other things. My parents bought it for me for Christmas one year, so my collection would stop gathering dust and making my room look like an eyesore. I keep all of my amiibo on the top shelf. I started collecting these back when the first Smash ones released for Wii U, and quit before my family sent me to rehab.
I don't have a problem.
Super Smash Bros? Yep. Mario Bros? Let's-a go. Pokemon? Gotta collect them all. Splatoon? I'm staying fresh. Animal Crossing? These were cheap. No one bought them. And everything in between. My goal was to buy them all, but I've taken a break so I can focus my money on more important things, like my Ys collection. It goes great with my bankruptcy. I started collecting Ys merch as soon as I realized it existed 2 years ago. Anyone who knows me knows that Ys is my favorite video game franchise. It has just the right amount of Adol and Kristen. It's an action-adventure series bundled with fantastic music, great stories, and an interesting lore. I bought most of the merch myself, but the Famicom version of Ys 1 and the replica of Rhea's silver harmonica were gifts from my friend Anne. She also bought me a Famicom when we went to AWA a couple years ago. I can't very well be an addict if I can't play the game. I bought the Switch Collector's Edition of Ys 8 when it released, even though I already had the PS4s. The Switches came with a letter opener and the PS4s didn't. Once I had the letter opener, I had no reason to keep the rest of the Switch version, so I gave it to a friend and got him addicted to Ys 2. I keep all my other collector editions of games on the second row as well, along with any official collectibles and a few rare accessories. I keep the Mario cereal boxes here too because they won't fit on top with the rest of the amiibo. I bought the Japanese collector's edition of Ys 9 when it first came out. The PS4 was region free, so I was able to play the game. I keep it in the box away from everything else because I ran out of room. Like I said, I'm working with what I have. I filled the rest of this row with game guides, novels, and other video game related booklets and CDs. I also had an Aladdin deck enhancer at one point in time, but I don't know what happened to it.
Huh?
I store gifts from other people on the left side of the third row. Anything that isn't Ys or an actual video game gets put here. One of my older brothers had this mug custom made for me as a Christmas gift. When I was younger, I created this crest for my symbol to sit inside. I eventually got rid of it so Nintendo wouldn't sue me when I became famous. That's right, I plan ahead. On the right side of the third row, I keep all of my handheld devices and mini consoles. I also keep any VMUs I'm not using here as well, since they technically double as small handheld devices. I also keep a box of all of my GBA accessories here, because I don't want to lose them or tangle them up with my other cords. The fourth shelf is where I keep all of my unofficial game merch and figurines. Most of these were impulse buys that bankrupted me when a Think Geek opened up in town. The Raiden Nindroid was a birthday gift from my younger brother, and the Nindroid in the PS2 Collector's Edition of whatever that game is was an impulse buy I picked up on a trip to New York with some friends. I use the fifth shelf to display all of my consoles that aren't plugged into my TV, and keep their cables and controllers in a bag behind them. I want to reorganize this someday, but it works for now. I plan on getting official carrying cases for each of the consoles, but that's going to take some time. On the other side of the room is a dresser where I keep most of my necessities, and a Chain Chomp desk lamp, also courtesy of Think Geek. The quilt on my bed is made of old video game shirts I wore as a kid but outgrew. It was another birthday present, this time from my aunt. This kinda made me mad at the time since I was still wearing most of the shirts. My mom had this made for me so I would stop wearing them everywhere I went. Still, all things considered, it's actually pretty cool, and it was better than getting rid of them. Take that, Goodwill! Nowadays, I feel like I'm a bit old for it, but I'm not about to spend a fortune on a new quilt when my old one still works. Most of the posters hanging up on the walls are from Club Nintendo back when it was still operational. They were pretty much the only things worth spending points on here in America. Some of the posters came from Nintendo Power, while others came from Game Guides and GameStop. This one came with the collector's edition of Fire Emblem Echoes. My mom stole this one from Walmart. This is one of my favorites, and the only good thing to come out of Sticker Star. It looks like a poster, but it's actually a giant sticker. This is my number 1 favorite poster that I own. This poster was custom made for a Smash tournament in my town. The Smash characters are hanging out at an iconic place on campus and attending the college. I kept a good portion of my game console's original boxes, as well as my Nindroids and some of my other merch, so I have something to carry them in if I move. I store them in the closet so they're out of the way. I also store some other stuff in here because I have nowhere else to put them, like my keychain collection, or my swords. My keychain collection was the first thing I started collecting since they were cheap and I wasn't making money as a young kid. I have 4 video game sword replicas: Raiden's sword from Metal Gear Rising, Sora's Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts, the Master Sword from Zelda, and finally, Link's original wooden sword, even though it's just a toy. I also have this box full of old video game toys I used to play with when I was younger. Most of them are broken and played with to death, but I didn't have the heart to get rid of them. Thanks to those of you who stuck around till the end. I have some big plans for the channel going forward. Video game gems will always be the main focus, but aside from Ginge Talks, I plan on starting a new series on the channel called Couch Crashers, where I play multiplayer games with the max amount of people possible. I'll only be playing simple games and multiplayer side modes, so I don't spoil games with bigger stories. I also have one more big project I'm working on that I hope to have out sometime early this year. I can't say much more about it, but I bought all of this to prepare. Keep an eye out for it in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep on. East 9 comes out tomorrow. Oh sweet, screw this, grab the tent, we're camping out.